Unless you
Yeah,
were talking
Gundam
about
Seed, worst
Monsanto.
Gundam. I don't want to talk about Seed ever again, if possible. Boys, I was
Yes.
gonna ask how your Valentine's days went, and then Bobby had to go and tell a gruesome story that will not be repeated on this podcast, and hopefully not repeated ever again to me, because I
Everything's
am
fine.
squeamish about that shit.
We're all fine. My wife had to
Yeah.
get stitches. That we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Please leave it at that. Johnny, how was your Valentine's Day?
Misty didn't feel great, so
Yeah, you said
we
you
I
just-
kinda
wouldn't
just,
feel
like,
great either if
stayed
I had to
down.
celebrate Valentine's Day with
Fair
you.
enough. Fair enough. I would also try to call in sick that day if possible.
I told her that we didn't have to get each other anything, but then I stopped by Walgreens and got our card and some chocolates after I dropped Jude off at school yesterday. And so then she was mad at me because I got her something. And I
Yeah.
said,
Why do people
Real
do that?
dick move.
Why do
Mhm.
you why say you're not going to do something when you do it?
it's just a card and some
It's like
chocolate.
when you're like at a kid's birthday party that says no gifts, and like
Mhm.
you mean
No,
gifts.
it's not the
You
same
mean,
thing.
You mean it. You
I don't know,
mean
'cause
it.
I knew that she wasn't feeling great, and so I was like, I'll get her a little.
Oh, these aren't Valentine's Day gifts. These are your sick gifts.
I mean, they're both because it
She was sick after you gave it to
Sure.
her.
It was a Peanuts card. She loves
I was sick
Peanuts.
before
It
you
was
gave it to her.
Lucy and Linus, and then we just hung out and watched Breaking Bad. We've been rewatching that.
Mm.
Well, it's the new year, so yes.
Yep.
I spent mine a little differently than you
Oh.
guys. Being unattached, this is what happens.
Yes.
I saw an anime.
Yeah.
What's new?
Yeah, I saw it in a movie theater.
And
You went to an anime on Valentine's Day.
I did. And you know what? It was just as fucking depressing. Who would imagine? So I went to go see. It was one night only. I would have gone any other night if possible, but they were doing it one night only because
on Valentine's Day.
Wow.
Yeah, because you guys are not familiar with Kaguya-sama Love is War. It's a great gag manga / anime about a guy and a girl who both like each other but refuse to be the one that says they like the other, because then they feel like they're subservient to the other one. So they're trying their best to get the other one to admit
This
that they
sounds
like
fantastic.
them. It's a great anime. It's a fantastic anime. There's been a couple seasons, and now there's a movie. And the movie, it's not out in a place I can watch it except for this one night only at our local Ronnie's, which is like a half-hour drive for us. But
hey, we saw that Gundam movie there together.
We did. Ronnie's has the anime. I saw the Dragon Ball movie there. I saw some other anime movies there. They bring the anime, so I go to Ronnie's. So I go to watch this. I'm like, this is like a romance anime. I'm going alone on Valentine's Day. It's raining that night. And I'm like, this is maybe the most depressing thing that ever could possibly happen to me. And then I walk into the theater.
Oh boy.
And it's a bunch of other single dudes who are just there. Like there's a few couples. And it was like, okay, great. And just some of the worst fucking people you could possibly imagine.
They do a hand check?
No, I mean it's not that kind of anime.
Good night.
The movie was fine. It was okay. The show's stuff has been better than the movie was, but there were some good moments. Until near the very end, like the climax of the movie has happened. We're just kind of like riding it out here. Let's finish this thing and get to credits. And then everybody in the theater starts hearing, "Wake up. It's time to wake up. What are you doing? You need to wake up." And in between all those phrases is like a phone buzz. This is somebody's fucking alarm on their phone. And we're all looking around like, who the fuck left the alarm on their phone? And finally, it's like 3 seats away from me in the corner. It's a guy and a girl who have fallen asleep during the movie. And their alarm is not waking them up. And so for like the last 15 minutes of the movie, people are trying to yell at him. Like I'm a few seats down. I'm trying to like get to the guy who's next to me. Like, fucking do something, man. He's like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, God, these fucking anime fans who can't have any sort of conflict in their lives whatsoever. I don't know. It was fucked. So the ending of the movie's kind of ruined, but it's fine.
I
And
got
then I
news
got
for
the
you.
fuck
It
out of
was
there as
ruined
fast
well
as
before
possible.
that.
No, you're right. You're right. It was a bad call. I'm glad I went. I had nothing else to do that night. But also, fuck anime fans, including me. Including me. We're all shitbags.
Yeah.
Don't. If you can avoid it, don't watch anime in a movie theater with other people. The only reason I went is because there's no other way to watch this movie for like another 4 months or whatever until it shows up somewhere.
Did you get any good snacks?
No, absolutely not. I wasn't I wasn't going to spend
Strictly
money at a
business.
movie theater. Fuck that. That's ridiculous.
Interesting.
They showed off their ad for like, buy the $48 bucket of popcorn. You can bring it back and spend $4 every other time you bring it back. Like, that's a terrible deal. Why would anybody do this? It was not $48. I can't remember what it was, but it was too expensive.
Chase, speaking of why would anybody do this?
Yeah.
We're the Casual Hour. We're a podcast ostensibly about video games, but mostly about one-night animes. You've heard from Chase. Chase, I assume you're doing better than you were on Valentine's Day tonight?
Well, I'm with my two lovers right now.
There you are.
So.
See, it all comes up the way it needs to. Johnny, you're here.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm all right, man.
Good.
All right.
And I am Bobby, and I am also here, and I am also doing all right. And this is a deep dive episode of the Casual Hour. These are, if you are uninitiated,
And all of our thumbs are attached.
Yes.
Yeah. In this household, we have 3.5 functioning thumbs. With that being said, our deep dive episodes are kind of a dealer's choice, and we've done things in the past like the best music in video games. We've looked at old video game magazines. We've done journalistic studies on developers. We've talked about where the industry may go. And tonight, Chase has planned something very special for us.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said dealer's choice, Bobby, because I have a pack of playing cards.
We'll collect playing cards.
We'll talk about why later.
We will get into that in a little bit.
You've drawn me in.
Before we do that, we've got a gaggle of games to talk tonight, including...
We are flushed with games.
Yeah. Now, should we shuffle things a bit and do the deep dive first? Or
I think we should play it straight.
Listen here, Joker. I'm going to keep talking because I'm the king. And I got my queen here. We're going to talk about The Last Guardian. We're going to talk about Metroid Prime. We're going to talk about Warhammer and a few other things as well. But we've got a fun episode.
We don't talk about Warhammer.
No, we're going to. But to get into the good stuff, we're going to start with Chase, and he is going to tell us about the games that he has been playing.
Yeah, I finished Last Guardian. Johnny wasn't here last week to hear my kind of initial thoughts on it. I was like a halfway through at that point when we had Jiggy.
He was here for that.
Again,
yeah, he was here.
Jiggy.
You're thinking of the week prior to that.
Yeah. You spun the wheel with Jiggy.
Oh, that's right. We spun the wheel.
You talked about it with Johnny. What happens to those anime shows, man? They really fuck.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, lost all track of time. I finished The Last Guardian.
Did it leave the impression at the end as much as it did at the beginning?
Let me put it this way. I don't know if it's a very good game, but it's also one of the best games of all time.
Okay.
Do you mean like the video game part of it?
Is
the
not great part of it?
Mm-hmm. And maybe the experience you have along the way is what elevates
something
it.
like that. I mean, if you want to read my full thoughts, I wrote an article about it. It's up right now on Gamers on the Go.
We'll be reading that.
Yeah. So go to gamersonthego.com. I wrote up another article, which I'm going to try to do for all of these backlog roulette things. It was really cool.
Cool.
Really, really cool. And even the parts that frustrated me, of which there are many, were not enough to stop it from being really fucking cool.
Neat.
And I just had a fantastic time with that game, and I don't think I'll forget my time with that game for an incredibly long amount of time. if ever. Left an impression.
Nice, man.
Something else that left an impression in a slightly different way is a game called Your Only Move is Hustle, which
I've
learned
seen
about
this.
today.
This thing
I
looks
learned about
wild.
today from Twitter. It was retweeted by one Austin Walker, who I tend to like the things he likes.
Mhm.
And so I checked this out. This is a turn-based fighting game, which sounded intriguing to me.
Yeah, that sounds like an interesting concept.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be one of those people who are like, oh, I thought of it first, but I have considered the idea of like, oh, I like turn-based games, I like fighting games, but I don't like playing. I don't like the Twitch-based stuff of fighting games. I wish there was a way to be a little bit more strategic in the way I play a fighting game, and I think about something like Dive Kick. That's come out that has simplified controls in some way and made you think about fighting games in a different way. One of my favorite fighting games that feels like a weird pick is the Street Fighter 4 on the or no, it's not Super. It's the 3DS version of Street Fighter 4, which launched with the 3DS, which a lot of people think is not good, and it's probably not good. But what I liked is that it had some of the special attacks on the touchscreen, so you could just touch them and throw out a flash kick without having to do the charge. And
Sure.
I found that to be really strategic and interesting to be able to just react with the move I wanted to do instead of it being about the execution of the move. So I ended up really liking that. So I've had this thought around my head of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if there's a turn-based fighter? I have no idea how you do it. Somebody out there thought the same thing and thought, actually, I do know how to do it. So they made this. It's. Did you
It
guys ever
looks
watch?
it looks like it's an editing almost.
Uh-huh.
I think
Yeah.
that's why I like backed away from it. The concept sounded cool, but when I looked at it, I'm like, this almost looks like stop motion animation.
A little bit, yeah, kinda.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish I had looked at it a little bit more before I jumped in, because what I saw on Twitter is the replay that somebody has
Yep.
that just shows the game running in quote unquote real time, where you see the fight playing out of
Mhm.
all the decisions that happen, and they just play those like it was fights in tight spaces.
Right.
But this is like what we wanted from fights in tight spaces, where it felt like this really fluid and crazy motion that was happening, but that turns were happening to make all this stuff go. That's exactly what this is. And so I saw that and I thought, okay, awesome. $5 on Steam, no problem. There you go. The one thing I did try to look up is like, is this going to be one of those games where there's no single player, there's no AI stuff? I mean, sure, this would be a fun thing. Maybe Bobby and I could play on a casual Monday,
Right.
but is there going to be something that I could just play on my own? And I'm looking through the Steam page and I do see a place that says single player. And I went, okay, there you go. That's what I needed to hear. There's a single player mode. So I downloaded it, I open it. The single player mode is like you play both sides at the same time. There's no AI
It's like
to
playing chess
anything.
against yourself, right?
Yes, it really is.
Yeah.
So I guess it'd be a cool way to try to like build your own fight scene, and make it like a stop motion animation. But I messed around with it and I kind of just tried to make one character absolutely crush the other one because one, it was fewer decisions, and two, I wanted to see kind of how the game worked. It's really complicated.
Dude, it's
it
all coming
says it's
back.
accessible.
No.
Yeah, it's not like
I this thing's got like overwhelmingly positive. So I typically, just so you both, I think you both know this, like I check the like Steam review pages pretty frequently just to
Mhm.
see for like those gems that are overwhelmingly positive, and this one
Yeah.
substantially
Same.
was.
Yep.
And I looked at it and I was like, okay, this is like a cool, like I like the animation, I see what they're doing. But when I saw what it looked like, look, I barely could put together what we have here for this show with like I had to like our intro scene, so that thing that loops the starting soon, like I had to hand animate all that, and that about put me over the edge. And when I saw that that's what this was, because I had to do flash animation in college as well,
Yes.
I just didn't like it. It's just not like, I don't want to be an animator. And when I saw this, I was like, fuck, man, like I'm not this type of, I'm a sicko, but I'm not that type of sicko.
Yeah, so there's things in this where you have the different moves that you can do, and you can just choose those, and that's not too bad. But then there's also for some moves, it's the angle you want it
Mhm.
to come out. If you're blocking, are you blocking high or low? If you use a dash or a jump, what's the angle of that jump? What's the intensity of that jump? And some of that is I guess it makes sense that it's there. Those are the options you would have available to if you were actually playing a fighting game. But I feel like when you are quote unquote simplifying it down into a turn-based thing, it needs to actually be simplified,
Yeah.
and this is not. It's still incredibly cool. It actually plays a little bit like that one bit racer that I talked about before,
Sure.
in that it goes in these small chunks of time, and then you have to make the next decision, and then it does another chunk of time, and then you make the next decision.
Can I ask you an input question really quick?
Yeah, please.
Are you playing this, like, this looks like it has to be a mouse and keyboard type game, I would imagine.
Yeah, I was playing it with a mouse and keyboard
Because you're like
on
probably
PC.
like pulling like anchor points on bodies, I would imagine, and shit like that.
It's not even that. You're not touching the characters.
Got
It
it.
gives you a couple of circles above the different moves. So if you select jump, then you can, on the circle, you can go, okay, this intensity and then this angle, and
Yeah.
then you lock in your selection, and it kind of goes through until the next decision can be made. Now those decisions don't happen at regular intervals. They happen when like the frame data. So this is thinking like about high end fighting game stuff here, but you think about when your movement animation by the frame ends, and then whether or not you can perform your next move before the enemy would be able to counter on that specific
Got it.
frame. So there's some situations where I could put in a long string of moves with one character because they had the frame advantage over the opponent. And then at one point I got to a place where, okay, now the enemy has a chance to react at some point. I have to actually put in the input for the enemy of what the enemy's going to do on this frame. And then if the things play out, and they're moving and I hit them with a jab or whatever, okay, now I have them in their knocked back state, and now I have the frame advantage again, where I can start putting in more of a combo thing. It's pretty complex, but I was able to make a fight within probably 20 minutes. It didn't look pretty. I didn't save my replay because it didn't look all that pretty, but I did have one character slash up another one, and
There you go.
it seems neat. If you've did either of you guys watch the Zhao Zhao videos when you were for some like the
I might
early
have
internet
seen them,
stuff,
but like
the stick figure fights?
yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah.
So there's, I believe it was a Chinese, based on Zhao Zhao. I think it was a Chinese animator who made a series of these, and some of them were interactive games, some of them were full animations, and then that led to a lot of the other stick figure fights that other people did on things like Newgrounds. So this feels like, when you're looking at the characters, they have a stick figure like look to them. They are very simple. You're not getting like Ryu and Ken style graphics here, but it reminds me a lot of those videos, and seeing all this cool ridiculous shit that that these very simple models are doing. Um, Again,
Jason,
I wish it had any sort of AI that could just kind of play with me in some way, even if it kicked my ass, just so I could start learning this a little bit more. But I do think for $5, maybe it is something that you and I could play, Bobby. I need to check if it actually has online play.
It does.
Okay, so
I
maybe
was
that would
reading
be
this
fun,
the Steam
having
page for
another
it.
person there where we can play
Yeah.
off each other and see what happens. But I think it's a really cool idea. I wish I had read the fine print a little bit more or watched a review or something of it before I got it. But again, for $5 for something that I think is
Yeah, man.
really, really neat in concept, I don't mind it too much.
Listen, all you have to do is ask. If you want to do a turn-based fighting game, we can play fights in tight spaces whenever you want to.
There you go. We could just play fights in tight spaces. You're totally right.
So Chase, you beat The Last Guardian and you really liked it. You've checked out Your Only Move is Hustle, and it sounds like you're very intrigued by it, but still finding your legs there.
Yeah, I don't know if it's something I'm going to come back to unless we played it as two people. Because single player, I just don't think there's a lot there for one person to enjoy. But I'm still really glad I supported it, and I think
Yeah.
it's a cool thing.
Very cool. I got a couple questions for you guys. Do you enjoy brick breaking games?
Yes.
Sometimes,
Do you like
yeah.
do you like pinball?
Yeah.
Not particularly.
Do you like the 1990s era Tiger Electronic handhelds?
Oh,
Yes.
God. At the time, yes. Now, absolutely, God, no.
That was the first video game thing I ever owned, was a Batman Tiger handheld.
Okay.
I asked for a Sega Genesis, and I received
little different.
A little different.
I got Sega the following Christmas.
Okay.
But I played the shit out of that Batman handheld.
I had a Jurassic Park one. I know that. I think I actually had a pinball Tiger Electronics game, which is probably why I hate pinball.
Fair.
That
Well,
sucked.
you might not like this, but I think you might.
All right.
I'm checking out a game called Bricky Boy, and this is another mobile game. I've been perusing that app store a little bit. It's free to play. It's made by Moreland Games. I don't know when it came out. I think it's relatively new. This is the absolute best modern take on a digital like LCD screen I've seen it. It's like such a joy to look at. It's a very simple concept. You have pinball paddles. You tap on the left and right hand side of your Bricky Boy console, and you are blowing shit up. You get power ups like your pinball becomes a bomb. A little kitty cat will come and hang out underneath your paddles and push the ball back up to save it. It's really fucking slick. It's a very cool one of these games. It's got some neat progression in it. The boss battles, I really think, are something on here. They do some cool stuff where they'll surround an actual boss by different bricks, and you have to like work your way into it and damage it. It does the thing where, hey, you got 100 coins for beating this level. If you watch this ad, we'll triple it. So you don't have to do those things. But again, why wouldn't you? Your coins get you some like cosmetic. You can get different designs for the Bricky Boy itself.
By the way, the Apple App Store says December 5th, 2020 was 1.0.
Oh shit! Wow,
This looks really cool.
I just would like both of you to download it and
I already
see
did.
it
I'm playing
on
it right now.
on
while
your
you're talking.
screen because it looks so fucking good. Like it's just a really well designed app.
They
It's
really
kind of got
nailed.
like a BMO look from Adventure Time to it.
Yeah.
Well, and they nailed the shadows and stuff.
Yes, it's awesome to look at. So that's Bricky Boy. It's something that like I've just been fucking around with a little bit. I used to play a lot of mobile games. I think that they've really kind of become just elaborate ports at this point in time. But when you find something that works really well for that medium, I tend to get pretty into it. So Bricky Boy, a game that's not new, but new to me. Speaking of not new games that are new to me, I've also been checking out. I caved and picked up Metroid Prime Remastered.
Okay.
And I did not play Metroid Prime back in the day. Maybe like
I played a demo.
Yeah, I think maybe something like that. But at the time, I just didn't have. I mean, I knew what Metroid was. I appreciated Metroid, but I just never really played Metroid games. Fast forward, I've played a few indie Metroidvania style games and really dug those. I played Metroid Dread and loved it. And I've been pretty harsh on Nintendo for a couple things. One, long in the tooth hardware. And we talk a lot about the Switch tax that they like to implement. And I saw that they had remastered this game. It ran at 60 frames a second on the Switch, and it came in at a slick $40. And I was like, you need to eat crow and go and pick this thing
And
up.
also they quote unquote fixed the controls.
That's the other thing.
what made me stop playing that game.
Yeah.
The
How
original,
much
you mean.
I bought it for the GameCube. I started it. I was like, oh, this seems really cool. Just like the mood and everything, but I hated the controls so much so that I quit playing it. So
the controls feel
hearing that
good
they
today.
fixed it, they feel
feels,
good.
Yeah, it feels like the only thing that's a little weird, and maybe this is just something you unlock in the game. There's not it's like I keep trying to sprint, like pushing the left thumbstick, and like that's not a thing that happens.
It's like Halo combat, like the
yeah.
first 3 Halos where you're just moving.
It does end up becoming a power. There's like Samus gets a lot of super speed powers in a lot of
break through walls
Metroid
and
games.
stuff,
So I bet there's a super sprint somewhere in there.
So look, I'm not gonna dance around it. This game is really fucking cool. I've always heard it's good. I know people love this. I know that the 4th one is coming apparently.
That's not a thing. No.
I don't think it is. But as Johnny had called out, and I felt this in Dread especially, there's such a fucking tone to these games. It's like there's a band called Health that, and like Crystal Castles, and just like that dark kind of like cyber synthwave that like I get from these games. And the tone of the Metroid genre is just fucking great. This works really well as a first person shooter. I think like I really like this. I think the 2D Metroid maybe I like better. I don't quite know yet because I'm only like just a little bit past the first like big boss and biome. I just went through a little lava area. Now I'm into an ice area in the game, but it runs great in handheld. I know that they really pushed Metroid Dread for the OLED Switch when that came out, and this looks really good on the OLED when I'm playing in handheld. I have played it here on my computer screen, and it's great there too. But $40, I'm excited to play it. It was not a game that was on my radar to pick up this year. I've got a few other things I'm going to finish up before I complete this, but I wanted to put some time in with it. 1, to quick look it, and 2, to talk about it tonight. And probably got like 3 hours in at this point in time. And I will call out. I don't like. I hate it when I forget that these older games don't have the quality of life autosave. And even on this one, like you have to go to a spot and heal and save up. And I had gotten pretty far without remembering that.
Oh no.
Yeah.
How much progress did you lose?
Let's just say there was a lot of gray on the map that I had made colored. So
That's a bummer.
It was a bummer, but it was a bought-in lesson, and I have not made that mistake since then. So Metroid Prime remastered, $40.
I
Very
seem
good.
to remember people. I mean, people liked the first Metroid Prime, and it came out at this interesting time where a lot of people were bitching that Nintendo completely forgot Metroid. It's not a thing anymore. Sure. And then Nintendo's like, well, fuck you. Here's the Metroid Prime first-person shooter, and here's also Metroid Fusion at like basically the same day. I think they might be like 2 days apart. Fuck off, Metroid fans. We gave you everything you wanted. Now shut the fuck up. But I feel like I remember a lot of people saying that Metroid Prime 2 is like the one. And I know that's on the Wii, so I'm sure I mean I imagine the controls feel a lot different and better than the original GameCube controls based on things like what Johnny said. But that's
I wouldn't be
what
surprised if they do anything else.
It was also on GameCube though.
I remember
they did. That was like the Twilight Princess. Say we did both versions, right?
I never played them on the Wii, but there was a sale on the eShop at one point in time where you could get all 3 of the Wii ports of those games for like $10. And I think actually friend of the show, Brad Ritter, told me about that, Johnny. And I remember we all picked those up that same day at work. And I never played them. I just had them like, oh yeah, these are cheap. I'll grab them. And anyway, this is cool. Like this is, I think what I've read, if you are a longtime fan, you have a good reason to go back to it. And if you've never played it, there's never been a better time to play it.
And if you are that purist, I mean, yes, there is the new control scheme, but they also do have the old control scheme in
and
there
the
as
Wii
well.
one too.
Oh, really?
You can,
Right. Yeah, because you have fucking Joy-Cons. Of course you can do that.
So they've got
Weird.
that. I haven't
Wow.
checked it out, but there's a hybrid version too. So you've got the new one, you've got the GameCube, and you've got the Wii version, and then a hybrid on there.
Wow. Not bad.
So the other game I want to talk about is not out yet. It actually comes out at the time of this recording tomorrow. But this is EA's new game called Wild Hearts. This is being published by Electronic Arts and developed by Koei Tecmo. This is EA's Monster Hunter game. We talked about it on our monthly preview. Because of the EA Access 10-hour trial, I've been able to put some time into this, and I am really, really, really loving this game.
It's really cool.
It's fucking awesome.
It has building in it, which is not
I don't
something
like
I would have necessarily thought to put into a monster hunting game. But yeah, the way that you've unlocked more stuff than I have, Bobby, because I've just done the first main mission.
Building. What kind of building are you doing?
So far, all I have is like a spring, like a sonic spring that I can jump off of, and I can stack boxes on top of each other, and then climb up those boxes, and then jump off, and then land an attack that does big damage. Or you can use it to block enemies so they can run into it.
There's some really cool stuff with it. So it's called Karakuri or Karakui.
Something like that.
Technology. And you hold the shoulder button and it opens up this menu essentially. And as Johnny was calling out, one of the first things you get are these bricks that if you just hold that and spam X, it will vertically stack them. And it's not only used for fighting, but traversing and going up, shit like that. You can resize these. I don't know if you knew that, Johnny. You can make them fucking massive.
Oh, you can?
Yeah. So I can have it huge and I can have a monster charging at me and then I can just drop that and they crash into it. It's really fucking neat. Johnny called out that spring. So there was this bridge that got busted out when I was fighting and some guy threw this spring down to where we could all just jump over this bridge where that happened. And what's neat is there's this kind of organic rhythm. I called it jazz to Johnny in a message, cosmic gumbo, where you start to get people, because when Johnny would build something, I would see it and we can all play off of it and they tie into
it's a
it.
Strand game.
Yep.
So actually there's a review out there, Chase, that says, what if you put Death Stranding in Monster Hunter? And
that sounds fucking awful. Nobody should put it like that.
But this is in all intents and purposes, it's not quite like a Dragon Quest Builders, but you can do some really neat things in a battle, and movement on this is way, way, way better than what any of the Monster Hunter games I've played. It feels much more like an action RPG. You have a dedicated jump button. Chase, you do not have to sharpen anything. You'll really like that.
Ooh,
okay. And there are, I think so far, 8 or 10 weapon classes. The bow's really cool. The katana you start with is really cool. But I have found myself back at a hammer, and I really like the hammer on this game also. It has the kind of Paper Mario, if you press a button when your attack hits, it makes the handle on the hammer longer, and you can keep doing that as you're and then you get this big spin move with it. You're upgrading your gear the same way, but it's a lot more straightforward. Hey, your impact goes up to this level, and now we're going to add in a crit booster if you build this hammer. Armor's really neat looking. It's got more of a Ghost of Tsushima vibe to the armors that I've seen so far. Character creation in this game is phenomenal. It's very inclusive,
very in depth, yeah.
And you can actually make your character look like yourself if you'd like to do that. It's only 3 players.
Make him look like Sonic the Hedgehog.
Maybe.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
A few things to call out here. The game comes out on February 16th. It is a $60 game. I think it might be a $70 game. It is 3-person co-op instead of 4 from Monster Hunter. And there was an interesting commentary on that The developers were saying like what we found was in most cases you're usually playing with another person. Like we see a lot of people just like linking up with a friend versus a group, and to find a group of 4 was much harder than it would to have like an alternative film with a group of 2 people based off of it, which I mean it feels more like the strike team from like a Destiny or something, which you know you get. There's I think 8 monsters in this game so far. The design is really cool. They feel a lot more elemental when you see them, and
the rat thing I fought that had a big flower growing out of its eye socket.
the one of them
Weird.
like they also appear to change the weather too. So like as you start the game, it's like you need to find the creature that's causing this to happen because there's like a blizzard. It definitely has a lot of Monster Hunter DNA, but I feel like it's its own thing, and I think it can sit at the table. I should point out that 2 things: it has crossplay, which is great, but the other thing is that it sounds like there might need to be some further optimization, depending on what your technology looks like. People are playing this on a very specific build right now for this EA trial. The developers have come out and said, "Hey, we've got a really big patch coming next week for the PC. They're going to add in DLSS later on. Consoles, I think, run a bit better, but are limited on some of those options from like textures and quality." I played Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch, which I enjoyed thoroughly there.
Fantastic looking game.
I liked it on the PC better, but it played just fine on the Switch. I've been maintaining a pretty good 60 to 70 frames a second at high settings at 4K. If anybody here is like really into that sort of thing from a performance standpoint, I can't wait to play more of it. We're going to stream it this Friday. It's fucking cool. And Chase, this could be the one that maybe makes you join in on the hunt.
Could be.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
It doesn't have a lot of the bullshit that you did not care for from our conversations on Monster Hunter so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly seems more promising from the kinds of games that I would play than a Monster Hunter would. I'd be happy to watch. I'd be happy to watch you do a quick look of it.
Yeah, that's the plan. So that comes out on the 16th. If you have EA Access or whatever they call it, you can play
EA
it.
Play
EA
or
Play.
Game Pass Ultimate, which includes EA Play. You can download the full version of the game and play it for 10 hours. And your progress, I don't know if you have to buy it from EA or what, but like if you do, then your progress carries over because it's the full version of the game.
Yeah, I bought it on Steam. It links to your EA account. I'm not holding my breath that I've
Well, then maybe it does. Maybe it does sync your character over then.
We'll find out. We'll find out for sure. Johnny, before we move on from Wild Hearts, you're playing this too. Is there anything that you wanted to chime in on that?
Like I said, I just played I played it for maybe an hour and was surprised by how much fun I was having. I think it does its own thing enough from what I can tell so far that maybe this is the game that people who don't like Monster Hunter could get into. I don't know if I'll be picking it up right away just because I have a lot of other stuff I'm working through right now. But I am looking forward to playing more of it on Friday with you in front of the show, Jason. And I also I have been going down a bit of a rabbit hole.
You do this.
Say that
lately.
again.
So I've had a very curious relation. I've been doing this curious dance with the Warhammer 40K universe for several years now. I remember being at a Borders, just to show you how long ago this was, and looking through a lot of the 40K novels and wanting to read it because it sounded interesting, but I was like, I don't know where the fuck to start. There are too many of these. And then Dark Tide came out last year. It was a bit of a disappointment, but I loved the look and the aesthetic and how over the top, also completely self-serious, but also they're kind of winking at you with the tone of everything. And I decided to check out Warhammer 40K Chaos Gate Demon Hunters, a game that Bobby played last year and liked quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which one is this?
this is the XCOM.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're playing as the Grey Knights, which is a faction of Space Marines, and it's an XCOM with with 40K flavoring to it. And I am kind of bummed that I waited this long to play it, because if I played it last year, who knows where it may have ended up.
So you're digging it?
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I like the all the weapons, and like, you know, I love everything about it tonally. And I like XCOM, so it makes sense that I would enjoy this.
And now you get all the lore and
Mhm.
are just loving it.
Yeah, I actually do. Like, I'm watching, I'm like, oh, okay, I know what these guys are all about. And I also, non-gaming related, picked up some actual 40K miniatures that my son and I are going to be playing with. I told him about the game and what it entails, you know, lots of dice rolls, things like that, and he seemed open to it. So I was like, okay, well, let's take a stab, see if we like it. And so we came home and we put together some of the models tonight, and he was looking, he's like, Dad, these are so cool. We primed them, and
We've lost him, Bobby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's gone.
The guy, our friend Johnny, the guy we knew and loved.
well, so
He's gone
I
now.
think I think the Gunpla that Chase and I have been into was kind of like the gateway drug to this.
Oh yeah, you're into the hard stuff now.
Yeah, it's like, you know, Gunpla is weed. This is like black tar heroin. So
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you're into
There's so much
Warhammer
good
now,
weed in the world, though, Johnny.
and
True.
it's
You
legal
didn't
here
have
now.
to go there. You didn't have to go deeper.
I wish you the best of luck.
I don't. I wish you terrible luck.
All right.
Bring my friend back.
So we've talked about Last Guardian. We've talked about Your Only Move is Hustle, Metroid Prime Remastered, Bricky Boy, Wild Hearts, Warhammer 40K, Chaos Gate, Demon Hunter. Anything else that we need to address before we go on a deep dive? Okay. Chase, what are we talking about tonight?
For my deep dive, I wanted to take us back a long time ago, back to the salad days of the 2010s. You guys remember that far back?
Oh God.
A long time ago.
I don't know.
It was like a decade ago.
You know, a lot of people were obsessed with mustaches.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like you couldn't go anywhere without a mustache t-shirt.
Sure.
Tom's shoes were really big.
Yeah.
Yep.
What was that?
Healthy.
Save Corny or whatever that, like, there was that, like
Coney 2012.
Yeah, Coney.
Yeah.
You know, those types of things.
Was
Binders
Harambe
full of women.
Was Harambe around then?
Harambe was around then.
Yeah.
2016.
Okay, that's probably a little later than him. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a
Okay.
wild
Anyway,
time.
video games. They were a little different back then. Just the way we think about video games was different back then. You, instead of having these hybrid consoles, we talked about the Switch. We've talked about the Steam Deck a lot on this program. I felt like back in the 2010s, we still had a pretty clear delineation between the kinds of hardware that we had. We had these top of the line, really like comparatively expensive home consoles, like your PlayStation 4s, your Xbox Ones. The Wii U was kind of like gesturing at this middle ground that might happen eventually. And then PC, I guess, of course, as well. So that was like one tier. And then the next tier, you had these cheaper but still high quality handheld consoles. You had your Nintendo 3DS, you had your PlayStation Vita, and then you had mobile devices that had ultra cheap games on them, thinking stuff on iOS and Android, tablets and phones. So you had these kind of three tiers, but there were a couple other things happening around the industry at the time. One of the first things is that people were getting really used to digital storefronts. The previous generation, Xbox 360 and PS3, we had dipped our toe into these more digital storefront stuff, downloadable games, Xbox Live Arcade, that kind of stuff. And now we're pretty comfortable with that. And the other thing that was happening is that you had mobile computing power getting really good. You saw new chipsets for phones and tablets. You saw really high quality looking video games on there on these devices that could play on these really small chipsets. But there was an issue with that, and one of those issues that is that it's kind of hard to show off how good these games look when you're showing them on like a phone screen.
Yeah.
You can play Asphalt 3D on your phone, and yeah, those cars look like cars, but like it's still just on your phone. And then the other problem is that the people who are buying games on this mobile hardware, they're not spending a lot of money for it. Like iPhone gamers are out there spending $1, maybe two, up to $5 if you're buying like the ridiculous Square Enix games
Sure.
that they put out there. But for the most part, you had people just paying like $1 for a game, which that's not really a sustainable business if you're trying to sell people on bigger and better hardware. So my deep dive tonight is talking about the answer to that, which was microconsoles at the time. So this is kind of where the idea of microconsoles come from. You want to entice both gamers and non-gamers that that there's this cheap hardware. I mean, it was powerful, but it was still really cheap hardware in comparison to something like buying a PlayStation or an Xbox. But these tiny miniature consoles that could connect to your TV. If it was one of the devices that ran Android, you had access to a huge library of games already just by buying the thing. And then you would also have a lot more types of gaming experiences available to you because you had this extra power, and because these were micro consoles and not just phones, you also had controllers with them. I mean, I guess Bobby, you'd know more than me. I'm sure there were like backbone controller ideas in the 2010s, but probably not as
There's a few. They were much like the consoles. They were micro.
Was it SteelSeries?
SteelSeries had one, and then like these were meant to be like in your pocket. They weren't at the time. Phones. If you were on iOS, especially, they were not working with Bluetooth controllers and things of that nature. And so you would have even some of these like smart TVs at the time. So they not only like if you weren't getting a 3D TV, you might be able to like play games. And I'm not talking about like cloud streaming. I'm talking about like an actual app store for solitaire and brick and shit like that on your Samsung. So you can hook stuff up that way. But yeah, similar to that for sure.
Yeah. So the word microconsole comes from OnLive, I believe, from our research. OnLive, if you guys remember that service, was a cloud gaming company that worked on a number of devices. It worked on PCs, it worked on tablets, phones, and smart TVs, like Bobby was mentioning. But OnLive also made their own set-top box in 2010 called the Microconsole TV Adapter, and it could run that OnLive service on any TV that it was connected to. And that kind of led to this boom of the microconsoles. So a small handful of years after that, there would be a ton of these different microconsoles. There was the Ouya. Everybody remembers the Ouya?
Oh yeah,
doesn't?
I do.
Great controller, the Ouya. Amazon's Fire TV. There were a ton of Chinese knockoffs. I think Samsung had something in the works. There were a lot of these kinds of systems. But there's one specific one I want to talk about tonight, and that's really what the deep dive is about. Like microconsoles were kind of it, but I wanted to talk about this.
Hey, I had one of those.
Yeah.
For audio
I
listeners
recognize
of the
that.
podcast, This is a PlayStation TV, or if you were in Japan, a PlayStation Vita TV. So, unlike many of the other microconsoles that we talked about, the PlayStation TV did not run Android. It ran what the Vita ran. It ran the OS
It was just a
of
Vita,
the
pretty
PlayStation
much,
Vita.
right?
Like this thing is basically a Vita without a screen or controls or any of the gimmicks that that a Vita comes with. Um, and because it ran Vita, because it was running off of Vita hardware and had Vita operating system stuff going on inside it, this thing could not only play Vita games, it could also connect to Sony's PSN store. But the question is kind of out there: why would you want a Vita that could connect to a TV? You could just have one of these. This is the PlayStation Vita.
There it is.
It's a fucking great system. I love the Vita. One of my favorites.
Vita is life.
So you know what? So true. So true. So if you're Sony, why would you even make the Vita TV or the PlayStation TV? And they had a few different markets in mind. One of them was China. China at the time, or a little before that time, had a ban on video game consoles. If you guys remember,
Yep.
they wouldn't let them come in. There were Chinese, or I think they wouldn't let imported video game consoles come in. There were Chinese companies that made their own consoles, but they weren't letting PlayStations in or Xboxes or things like that. Those rules got brought back, or they lifted that ban. They started allowing consoles again, but the Chinese market, and I'm no expert on the Chinese market, but I believe that the Chinese market was not super jazzed about bringing these giant consoles into their homes, because they just didn't have a lot of familiarity with these things. So something smaller that they were kind of used to, that other companies had been making, and they'd been using. They're like, okay, this might be something that the Chinese market could be a little bit more familiar with and be more interested in. By a similar token, other Asian countries might be more interested in something that's this small instead of a giant, huge PlayStation 4, because just houses, homes, apartments in these Asian countries are often way smaller, and to have a giant bulky video game console in your home is not preferable. But to have something that's why I brought the pack of playing cards. These are basically the same size. Having that connected to a TV is a much more enticing idea. Bobby, what do you got?
If you're going to get to this point, like, just shut me up. But
Okay.
When you were talking about the ban happening and like why they had those markets, like, I remember the big push that was happening alongside the PS4 for the remote play. And if you're going to talk about that, then I'll shut up. But
it is one of the next points here. Yeah, so we'll talk about it right after this one, which is this thing we kind of mentioned it a little bit before. A PlayStation TV. This cost $99 when this came out. PlayStation 4 at the time, $399. So if you just wanted a video game console, this is a pretty cheap option, a pretty easy lift to get into your home. And then yes, as Bobby said, they're also Sony gamers, people in the Sony ecosystem who, even though they had a PlayStation 4, somebody like me, for instance, having a PlayStation TV, this thing could do remote play. So you could have your PlayStation 4 on your main television, and then I even remember in their first trailer for it, it's like these two guys playing. I forgot what they're playing. It's like God of War or some shit. But I think it might have been Call of Duty. They're playing a game in the living room, and then like the little brother comes in. He's like, "Hey guys, what's up?" And they're like, this fucking kid." And so they leave the kid with the TV, and then they go to the bedroom and start making out. I mean, start playing playing
Wow.
remote play on their PlayStation TV.
I mean, it's still a
instead and picking
rooftop
up the video
party,
game.
but it's
Yes,
still
absolutely. The rooftop party killed the the bedroom PlayStation remote play system. You're
That was
absolutely
like
right,
the
John.
main reason I got this thing when I did was I thought the Vita was cool and
Mhm.
I had
And the
remote played.
Vita also had remote play.
Yeah.
Like, so you could. I know I didn't do this because I'm not a fucking psycho, but there were people who played Destiny on their Vita. I can't imagine.
I played Kill Switch,
Killzone.
Killzone.
Okay.
Anyway, so the house I was in at the time, down in the basement was where my PlayStation. We had like one TV for me and my roommates. I had my PlayStation there. My room was up on the third floor. So I was like, well, you know what? Like, I'll just do this, and I'll be
Sure.
right as rain. I have a small TV up here. I'll use this for that. And if I'm not mistaken, it only supported the DualShock 3.
Yeah,
At
I remember.
it only supported the DualShock 3 at launch, but it was the Japanese launch. And we'll talk about launch dates in a bit here. Eventually, it will get DualShock 4 support, and I'm pretty sure it had DualShock 4 support before it even got to the US.
Okay. Anyway, I got it for that reason. And at the time, I remember it was leaving me a bit more wanting from that experience. I just think it was maybe a little too ahead of its time.
Yeah. Well, the reason I wanted it, because I still lived alone in an apartment at the time. I didn't really need uh I, I I had access to the TV. Nobody else was playing on the TV because again I lived alone. But what I liked here is that like I showed, I have a Vita here.
Yeah.
I wanted to play my Vita games on the go as you do, and then the idea that I could bring my Vita back into my apartment and either just take the memory card out of the Vita and plug it directly into the or the PlayStation TV. I'm gonna keep calling it the Vita TV because I just like that name better.
Yeah.
Or you could use the cloud stuff and sync from the content manager app and then sync to the PlayStation TV's content manager app, and just have your game save transfer over, and now you could be continuing to play that same save on the TV. And I thought that was going to be really cool. That'd be a neat thing to do, and also just hey, it's a way to put Vita games on your TV. That's weird. That hasn't been done before. I would like to see that. The Vita. We'll talk more about some of the other things you could do with this thing, but the Vita doesn't have an HDMI out or any way of getting the video out. It was something that was planned originally, and then they dropped that feature before they finished building it. So it's just not available. It makes it really hard to capture Vita games until something like this comes out. So you had
I think the
those
price
different
was really
markets
good
there.
too. You called that out. I think that was
Yeah.
a pretty important thing for them to hit that price.
$99
$99
bucks,
is an enticing thing to just have a console, and also unlike a bunch of Chinese knockoff stuff or an Ouya that is unproven. I mean,
Right.
this is fucking Sony. Like you feel like you can trust a company like Sony to put out a piece of hardware and continue to support it. Those might be somewhat unfounded claims as we continue moving on here, but it was a good thought at the time. Anyway, so let's talk about when this thing released. It released in Japan November 14th, 2013. Initially, Sony didn't really have any plans of bringing this over to North America or Europe, but there was a lot of buzz for it. Microconsoles were huge at the time. People were talking them up, and it seemed like there was a good amount of U.S. and European gamers who were like, "Hey, we'd actually buy one of these if you brought it over." And eventually, Sony's like, "Yeah, okay, we've got an idea of how we might bring this over," and that was PlayStation Now. Did either of you guys fuck with PlayStation Now?
they did.
Yeah.
What was your experience of PlayStation Now, Johnny?
Not great.
I think I did like the month-long free trial,
Yeah.
and I still have games. I'm sure I can just hide them. But like when I look through my PlayStation library, there are still games that I tested on PlayStation Now that show up in my library, but
Sure.
I can't do anything with them. But
Right.
yeah, it was less than ideal. Wasn't that On Live that they were using? Because they acquire On Live?
Yes.
So OnLive is acquired by Sony, but I think they also acquired Gaikai. And I
Yes.
thought Gaikai was the PlayStation.
Was the tech
Now
that they
stuff.
used?
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember which one.
They have them both now, but yes, I believe it was Gaikai, and OnLive was still hanging around, and then they bought OnLive too. So yeah, PlayStation Now, that's a service that you could stream PS2, PS3, and some PS4 games to a number of different devices. Your actual PlayStation 4, or you could do it to this device right here, the PlayStation TV. In fact, at Sony's E3 2014 press conference, Sean Layden, who does not work at PlayStation anymore, he left the company a handful of years ago.
Yeah.
He announced the microconsole and announced that it would come to the US in 2014, and it was announced as part of their launch of PlayStation Now that it would be coming out the same day as the PlayStation Now beta would launch, and that was on October 14th, 2014. That's my birthday. Happy birthday to me. Here's a Vita TV.
Yay.
And then Sean Layden would go on to talk more about Vib Ribbon and Mortal Kombat X, which was kind of wild that going from one of those games to the next. That's a silly thing. So yeah, like I said, October 14th, 2014, that is when this thing officially released to the US. It would come to Europe and Australia a month later after that. It launched at $99. We talked about that. There was also a $139 bundle that included a PlayStation TV, a DualShock 3 controller, an HDMI cable, an 8 gigabyte memory card, and memory cards. These were Vita memory cards, so the proprietary shit, not an SD card. Not even like the what were Sony's memory cards called? Like the memory stick duos or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That bullshit.
There were special, even more proprietary Sony Vita memory cards. Fucking expensive. Those things are fucking terrible. But it's the only way you could get the games on there. But it also came with the crown jewel of this bundle was a copy of the Lego Movie, the video game. Not the Lego Movie, the video
The video game of the Lego Movie.
Right. Mortal Kombat, the movie, the game.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So how did this thing do? I feel like we foreshadowed it a little bit here. But
I guess
as Johnny mentioned, PlayStation Now, kind of a flop. And that didn't help things for the PlayStation TV, which already ended up being kind of a niche thing, and then one of the niches kind of evaporated overnight with the PlayStation Now stuff, which got pretty quickly. It wasn't rebranded, but it was like restructured, so it worked in a different way.
Yeah,
and
it's part of their PlayStation Plus stuff now.
Yeah, it's like not completely gone, but it's basically gone. It's a very odd thing. But yeah, this PlayStation TV didn't do all that well either. In Europe, they slashed the price by 40% in March of 2015, which, if you're doing the math, is only like 4 or 5 months after it released there.
Now, Chase, I'm not a businessman.
Yeah.
But reducing the cost of a product like that significantly within
a product that was already pretty cheap. Comparatively.
Within like the next quarter. Doesn't seem great.
No, I don't think it does bode very well for the health of the system. Now that was just Europe. Anecdotally, though, I feel like I remember a similar big price cut happening in America. I couldn't find any evidence of that, but I feel like I remember hearing that it went down in price. Johnny, I think you're right, because at the end of 2015, Sony had stopped shipping the console to everywhere except Asia. So They gave it a year.
I think that at the time, Sony was pushing the PS4 for a lot of reasons. They were also introducing the concept of VR, and like they started to shift away from Vita at the same time.
Yep.
I think that this
Well,
device.
I mean, again, at that 2014 E3, Sean Layden, like before they started talking about the PlayStation TV, was talking about the Vita, and he's like, it's still very much a pillar of our business.
Sean
which
says a lot
you
of things.
you never like to hear a video game company talk about their pillars. Nintendo has done this time and time again. We're like, oh yeah, the GBA is still the third pillar of our marketing strategy. No, it's not. It was dead within the next year.
Okay. Sorry,
Yeah,
not to get us too far. This is PlayStation related.
please.
But it got me thinking about PlayStation View. Do you remember that? Man, that was another thing that they
Good
did.
stuff.
That one lasted longer. That was 7 years. But my goodness.
Yeah. Do you guys remember Powers?
Hours?
The Brian Michael Bendis superhero TV show that was only on
No.
PSN. They announced that in E3.
I don't remember that.
Oh my
I think they made 2
God.
seasons of that. It's not very good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy shit. That's
Yeah.
what a
This was
weird
like the
thing.
time when Heroes was a big deal, and then everybody had to make their own heroes. Good stuff. Good stuff. And now we have the boys. So,
Voice is
worked
good.
out. Anyway, so yeah, at the end of 2015, this thing was pretty much dead in the water, and they weren't shipping any more new units to the States or to Europe. And I think there were even reports that they weren't shipping it anywhere, and Sony tried to come out and refute those. They're like, no, we're still selling in Asia. It sells just fine in Asia. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. So if you did buy one of these things, like Bobby and I did, what did you actually get out of this thing? This thing, as I mentioned, has HDMI out. It has a USB port that you can charge your DualShock 3 or DualShock 4 controller into. It's got an Ethernet port here in the back as well. Although it does work off Wi-Fi. It also plays because it is a Vita. It takes the PlayStation memory cards, and it also has a slot here for PlayStation Vita cartridges. So essentially, it is just PlayStation Vita. But because the actual Vita has all of these different features on it, it has a front-facing camera, it has a rear-facing camera, it's got a touchscreen, it's got a back touch pad, it's got an accelerometer. This thing has a bunch of different features in it. This little black brick doesn't have any of that shit. So some games just inherently don't work on the PlayStation TV. And some of those games are a big deal, or like the big sellers for the Vita. Let me just go down a very small part of the list of games that do not work on the PlayStation TV. Uncharted Golden Abyss.
Now that seems kind of important.
That's a big one, right?
That's a big one. Now, that was a launch window. I don't know if it was a actual launch game. But that came out really early in the Vita's life cycle. That game very much had a bunch of Vita-focused features in it. There was you rubbed, using the touchscreen, you rubbed the artifact to kind of like blow the dust off it. You had to like use the accelerometer as you went over tight ropes to keep your balance. There were a lot of features in there that they just threw the gimmicks at. So it makes sense that it doesn't work on the PlayStation TV. But also, it's a fucking Uncharted game. That's kind of one of your biggest franchises at the time.
Right.
Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation, Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified, Flower, Gravity Rush, Little Big Planet Vita, Tearaway, Wipeout 2048, and a lot more. Now, some of these games, like Uncharted, we mentioned, has a ton of features in there that use a bunch of the Vita gimmicks. Some of these games do not. Wipeout 2048 only uses the touchscreen in the menus, and I believe it's only the first menu. So other than that, you should be able to play it on a PlayStation TV with no issue. but because it has one small instance where it uses the touchscreen, it got blacklisted from the PlayStation TV hardware, so you can't even load it up on the system, which is a bummer. Now, there were some enterprising young hackers out there who actually made it so they modded the system so you could load any game
On that?
on this thing, any Vita game on this.
Okay.
But if it still had those features that would prevent it from being able to be played here, you'd still get locked at the Wipeout 2048 screen because you couldn't choose what race you wanted
Sure.
to do. Some games got blacklisted that should have total compatibility, so those games got fixed. And then I think some more hackers came around and tried to find different workarounds to make games like Wipeout work on this thing. I have not modded my PlayStation TV. I just end up playing those games other places. Wipeout 2048 is available as part of the Wipeout Omega collection, I believe that's right. So you could play that game with that looking way better with a better controller. Yeah, you don't have to do that to yourself. But some other games like Gravity Rush could work on this thing. Also, Gravity Rush you can play on PlayStation 4 right now or a PlayStation 5. Do that instead. It's a better way of doing it. But you could play some games here. So when I put it like that, this just sounds like a bad Vita, right? Why would you?
It does
would
sound
you
like
ever-
that.
Why would you ever have this if I already had a Vita? I mean, I know we mentioned it's kind of cool to have stuff on a TV and the remote play stuff, but why would you buy one of these things? Let me ask you guys a question. Were you at all excited when Sony announced the PlayStation Classic? That kind of PS1 thing that had a bunch of preloaded games
I
on
mean,
it?
until
A
I
little bit.
heard how those games ran,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I was intrigued. I was going to buy it, and then they were all the PAL versions.
Do you
which
remember
ran-
how expensive it was to get a PlayStation Classic at the time?
Wasn't it over $100? Wasn't it like 150 or something?
That sounds right. You could buy one of these, and you could just buy all the PlayStation 1 Classic
I
games.
know. That was why I
had a-
wanted one of those, is because it could do
had
that.
a much larger library of PlayStation 1 games. I'm pretty sure it had everything on the PlayStation Classic, and a lot more. So if you want just something that can play a bunch of PlayStation 1 games, this is your thing. Like, this is honestly better than a PlayStation
That
1.
was yeah, because I remember when that came out, like that is what made me want to buy one. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't have cared less about the other stuff that it did. It was the fact that it had that massive library of old games that you could play on that tiny little box.
This is a great machine if you want to play Final Fantasies 1
Is there people
through
doing like
10.
hacks and shit to those things at this point?
I don't hear about many hacks these days, other than just the whitelisting hacks to get the Vita games to work on here. I'm pretty sure almost assuredly there's a way to make this more or less a Raspberry Pi that can emulate all the other shit you want. I don't know. I mean, the Vita, people have hacked Vitas to be able to do that, so I'm pretty sure whatever hack you did to a Vita, you can probably hack a PlayStation TV and do very similar things with. I don't. If I remember my Vita hacking stuff right, I don't have a hacked Vita. It's just what I remember from people talking about it. I'm pretty sure something like N64 games run bad. N64 games run bad on a lot of things, but if you want to get just your NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis games, I'm pretty sure there's totally hacks that will allow you to do that. I still think there's something fun about playing PSP or Vita games on a TV. The thing that was most interesting to me at the time was Persona 4 Golden, because that was a game that was locked to the Vita. Persona 4 was on the PlayStation 2, but the upgraded Golden version was a Vita exclusive. This is the only way you could get it on a television. I mean, nowadays it's on Steam, it's on Switch now, it's on everywhere, so you can just play that in a better, better might not be the right word. I don't know. Like the way Atlas ports some of these games, people are pissed about everything. So
Sure.
maybe it's not the best way to play Persona 4 Golden. But there are easier ways to get Persona 4 Golden than buying a PlayStation TV. I also remember, I mean, we mentioned about the capturing both PSP and Vita games. And because this is a Vita, you can play all the PSP games you want in here. You could play Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker on this thing. That's a good game. Good game wherever you want. You could also play Peace Walker on like the updated collection, the HD collection that they made. I would say do that instead, but you could play it here. One of the things that you can't do on pretty much any other console is play PlayStation mobile games. PlayStation Mobile was a another short-lived Sony service. There's also PlayStation Minis, which I think Minis might still be on the PlayStation Store for a Vita.
Oh man,
But
I don't
PlayStation
know.
mobile games are dead. I know that. Um, there's really only 2 PlayStation mobile games that matter to me. One of them is Super Crate Box, which is made by Vlambeer. That game is also available in lots of other ways, but I just had the PlayStation mobile version and played a lot of it. And the other one is one of my favorite games that I feel like I talk about a lot, and that's Tokyo Jungle Mobile, which is different from Tokyo Jungle, the PS3 game. It's a more turn-based style. It's on a grid. It's like an isometric grid-based Tokyo Jungle.
I don't know if I know that one.
I think that game rules. And there's not a way to play that game anymore. Thankfully, the memory card on my PlayStation TV has it on there. It didn't have a save file for it, but it had the game. So I went and I played as the Pomeranian again and went through and ate some chickens and died to a wolf and had a fucking great time.
Sounds like a fucking awesome time.
It's a great game. I might go and just get the Velociraptor again because the Velociraptor fucking rules.
Yeah.
Tokyo Jungle Mobile is a great game. And Bobby, we have a way to capture it. We might have to do a quick look of Tokyo Jungle Mobile.
You do really have a way, man. That would be.
I'm pretty sure people have hacked. People have emulated the PlayStation Mobile stuff. You could get Tokyo Jungle Mobile in other ways, but this is an authentic way to get it. So we might do that. And then, like I mentioned, the thing that I probably use it the most for is at the time I was playing MLB The Show 15, which is the one with Yasiel Puig on the cover, a player who does not play in Major League Baseball anymore. But I remember going out playing a game of baseball on my Vita, and then coming home, plugging that memory card into the Vita and into the PlayStation TV, and continuing my season, and just being able to go back and forth between these two systems and having a great time. Now, is that better than just docking a Switch? No. It's much nicer to have a Switch now that you can just take the actual console and plug it into the TV and then take it out and continue playing it. That's way better, but in a way, this is kind of like a proto Switch. I would say this influenced the Switch just as much as something like the Wii U did.
It's one of those things where I bet Sony, like when the Switch came out, they're just like, fuck, we just had to build a dock? That would have been cheaper.
Yeah, basically.
We could have just
probably would have worked out pretty well for them if they did.
I mean, think about it. Like, they could have made a dock. They already had the controller support into the Vita. The Vita, did it have HDMI out capabilities?
The Vita did not. This does.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
the Vita did not.
Man.
Yep. What could have been? But yeah, this thing died a pretty quick death, and very few people seem to remember it at all. Microconsoles in general kind of completely died as well. I mean, I guess Steam machines were a thing for a bit.
They're all cloud consoles now.
Right, yeah. Sure. There's lots of cloud stuff going on. And I think people, you even talked about it earlier with something like Bricky Boy, sorry. They're just, I feel like we don't talk about mobile games like we did a handful of years ago.
Around the same time this thing was out. That's quite.
Yeah.
That could have hurt this thing too.
Yeah. I remember like a time ago, like those. I mean, I was running Gamers on the Go, my handheld video game podcast website thing, and I feel like I talked about mobile games just as much, if not more, than Vita and 3DS games because they were so ubiquitous. You had big names putting stuff out on there. It was like people were making those games, and people were also looking and talking and playing those games. And now I don't know if it's just the free to play gotcha nature of a lot of these things that has just kind of sucked the life out of that, or if there's just other avenues and other platforms that people are more interested in making and playing games on. But I feel like nobody talks about mobile games anymore. In fact, it's still a shock to me every time Bobby says, "Hey, have you tried this game? It's on iOS." I'm like, why are you still looking at the App Store? No, who's looking at the App Store anymore? But I guess some people are.
Well, let's not forget that we just talked about a few months ago Into the Breach coming to the App Store,
Yep.
and a game I also liked a whole lot, Spiritfarer. That's on like I think Netflix is bringing some really robust games to these devices,
That's fair.
and I think that's been like I have an Apple Arcade subscription still, so like I go to that to see if it's anything, and I go and compare it to the actual game app store, and that's where I start to see where things are at. Like I can't tell you the last time I went onto my phone and looked up like what's the most trending new apps. Like I have
Yeah.
not added
Never.
new apps to my phone
But also,
in
like,
some
when's
time.
the last time you remember Jeff Keighley mentioning a mobile game that wasn't named Point P? It's like we just like these aren't games that show up at the Game Awards or show up in people's
That
top
was
10
the
lists
who
for
made
things.
Journey.
The same devs of Flower devs. I forgot their name.
I
Is it
think
People
they're
Make Games?
it's
Yeah.
yeah, they have that game Sky or Flower. No, Flower they already
Right.
had Sky Children.
Sky. Yeah, Sky, the something
That
children or something.
that was a big, I think that might have been like the last game I heard in any of those circuits kind of get
Yeah.
talked about. And even this year, actually at the Game Awards, it's not only on mobile anymore, but there's a pop star that was doing an in-game concert for that, which is strange.
Mm.
And they talked about, I don't know if they talked about the game being on mobile there. That might have been the last time, but I understand your point. Like
Yeah, I mean,
it just,
it seems like so much more often it's the only news stories I'm seeing is, oh, this pop star has something in the Final Fantasy gotcha game, or I'm still playing Fire Emblem Heroes because I'm sick. But, but we don't have the fire for
no.
mobile games that we did
Nope.
in the 2010s. That's weird. It's just the way that video games, the industry has changed, and I would think the industry has passed by things like microconsoles, things like the PlayStation TV, and you know me, when I do these deep dives, I like to go back to weird hardware stuff, and most of the time it's much older than the PlayStation TV, but this thing just feels like it came and went so quickly that it is one of those things that is rarely remembered. And I wanted to mention it because I was digging through my house as I was moving to here and just looking through stuff, and I find this little thing and I go, oh yeah, I plugged this
Yeah,
into
man.
my TV last week and put in my Japanese copy of Puyo Puyo Tetris and played a little bit and went, fuck, this is fun. This is great.
Yeah.
And then I remembered, oh god, the DualShock 3. This feels like shit. I hate this.
That's maybe one of my least favorite controllers.
And then I plugged in
Yeah.
the DualShock 4 and went, this is great. I love this. So I don't know. Maybe I'll play through Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker on this. I thought I was gonna use this as like a Hulu set top box because my smart TV doesn't have Hulu in it as an app. This thing also doesn't have Hulu as an app that you can do. Maybe at one time it did, but now the only thing you can do is Netflix.
More like fooled you.
I guess. I guess it got me. Anyway, that's the PlayStation TV.
Awesome. I missed that thing.
Thanks, Chase.
I also missed this thing, but yeah, fun little hardware deep dive. It's been a while since I've done one of those, and I wanted
Always
to
a
go
good
back.
time, man.
So Bobby, I'll throw it back to you and
Yeah.
this fucking show.
We will end the show. We did not stream on Monday night. We took the night off. We were going to stream stuff from the Steam Next Fest. That has concluded. That should be a longer event. There's like hundreds of demos. That needs to be more than a week.
Now, if you've downloaded the demos, you can still play them, correct?
Some of them, others no.
Okay.
Some of them have a wish list only or a purchase button, but a lot of them you still can play if you have them downloaded, but you can't download them any longer. So that was Monday. Tuesday, we put up a quick look for a game called Power Chord, one that we've streamed on the show. It's a really cool turn-based deck builder. Go check that one out. Tonight, of course, you just experienced our deep dive, which was a great time. Thank you, Chase. And we have a quick look going up tomorrow for Inculinati, and that is another. I saw somebody say this is the Monty Python within Pentiment, and I thought that was pretty accurate. And
yeah, I can see that.
That is how we'll pitch it. It's a turn-based battler as well, but it's got a lot of fun writing and a really cool style. And if you've been here the whole time, you heard that I'm a big fan of Wild Hearts that comes out on the 16th. We're going to stream that on Friday night. So if you wanted to watch us hunt some monsters, we will be doing that there. Otherwise, we will probably do a quick look at that game at minimum in the future and get that out to you all. Chase, I linked to earlier. You mentioned a couple things for yourself. What do you have going on these days?
Yeah, first and foremost, I'll mention again, finished Last Guardian, had a great time with it, wrote a relatively sizable piece, and also included a bunch of screenshots I took as I played of that game. Go read that on gamersonthego.com. And then also I have another podcast that I do with my good friend Pierce Shane called Pilot Program, where we watch the first episodes of every television show ever made, eventually. We just put out episode 5 a week or two ago, and that is on In Living Color. That is out. You can go listen to it now. And we have mentioned what our next show is going to be on. I think that records sometime in the next week or so. That's going to be on a Japanese live-action drama show called Blue Blazes. And I'm pretty excited about that. It's a show that I really like. Pierce has never seen, so I get to kind of introduce it to him. And that'll be fun. So go check that out. It's in the link tree as well under Pilot Program. And then I've got some other stuff, but the other things aren't really new at this point. So I'll let you know when something changes with that. That's another time.
Johnny, you are painting toys. Are you still reading books? Are you still eating tacos? Are you still a dad?
I'm still all of those things. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Oh, sorry. Speaking of reading books, I finished the first of 3 volumes of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. So
that's great, dude.
I finished 70
Happy
chapters.
Valentine's Day.
Only 140 more to go.
God.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Johnny, any new books for you?
Nope. Still working my way through the Stormlight archive.
Okay. We will be back Friday night with the Casual Friday. Check out our quick looks. Check out Chase's podcast that he has, and go read a book to make Johnny happy. We'll talk to y'all soon.